think Activision was a little surprised with how successful Skylanders was. But hey, can't stop that gravy train at the first stop now, can we? We gotta go bigger, we gotta go better, and what better to do that with giants?
We're going to have a bit of a marathon of these games, as after the 200th review I really haven't put anything together in terms of a review schedule, and I've been playing by ear. But I have all this Skylanders footage, so might as well put it to use in the meantime. After playing SWAT Force and knowing that I wanted to experience the first game, I knew I had to get the sequel too. I wanted to see how the series was going to evolve and change. Sure, they could bring in new toys, but then they would just be repeating the same thing. But yet you can't change the mechanics of the main game. So, what to do? Well, I think that someone at Toys for Bob said, let's make the figures bigger, and someone at Activision saw dollar signs and said, that's a lot of money, I want it! And Skylanders Giants was born. And that's pretty much the only development history I could find on it. If you want the rest, check out my review of Skylanders Spyro's Adventure, because this is a case of the first made a lot of money, let's make another. I got this game for $5 on the Wii U, and I already had the Trap Team portal from the PS4, so there was no need for me to buy the starter kit at all, since the PS4, PS3, Wii U, and Wii portals are all compatible and are backwards compatible with all previous games, and I already had a Giants figure as Ninjini as the first Skylander that I bought, so I was all ready to go. And again, I suggest watching my review of the first Skylanders game for advice on how to get started with the series if you're new to it. Graphically, for a Wii U game, I would say that it's not that good. It looks darker though, not as bright as colorful as the first game, but I think that's just because of the new story setting. I want to say that the 360 version of the game looks better, but I think it's more atmosphere than anything. One thing that I have noted is that this version of the game has a pretty low frame rate. When you swap out the Skylanders, the animation of them being summoned is at 60 frames per second, but when you get into the game world, it's below 30, maybe around 24, which is fine since anything below that and you'll notice stuttering, but it's a solid frame rate and doesn't dip below whatever it's set at. The sound is just as good as the first. The music is that of an epic adventure with Patrick Warburton returning as Flynn and is pretty awesome and funny, much funnier than the first game. Callie also makes a return, and I think she's the only returning character besides Eon and Chaos and Glumshanks. And Chaos is voiced by Richard Stephen Horvitz once again, and really steals the show whenever he's on screen. Tara Strong voices the Skylander Flashwing, and she's actually become one of my favorite ones to use. And one of my favorite comedians, Bobcat Goldthwait, voices Pop Fizz, and I was holding off on getting him since I have enough Magic Skylanders as it is, but now I wanted him. The mechanics are the same as the last game. You have many Skylanders to choose from, each one attuned to a certain element: fire, water, earth, air, magic, tech, undead, and life. And they have their own playstyle. You can also bring over your Skylanders from Spyro's Adventure and continue to use them, which makes the game easier. The level cap is also raised from 10 to 15, and I only brought in my older Skylanders from the first game to unlock certain areas, but wouldn't use them until my Giants figures were at a high enough level.
And the real sad thing is, the gimmick that this game sells you on is really underutilized. I used the one giant figure that I had for about a total of 5 minutes.
The new Giants mechanic allows you to perform feats of strength, like move boulders, smash through certain floors for treasure and rewards. You can push or pull certain objects, or they can smash through walls that you can also use a conveniently placed bomb on. They're not really needed, especially when the things you need them for are either optional or there's a way around it. There was an area where I could either have a giant pull a boat closer to use its cannon, or play the captain of it in a minigame called Sky Zones to have him do it for me. The Giants aren't very useful. I was waiting to use Ninjini for a while until all the other figures caught up to her in level, as I tried her out in SWAT Force, but I only used her in certain situations, like opening up secret areas where only a giant could, and on the occasion when my other Skylanders were knocked out. Sure, she's more powerful than them, but her attacks are slow. Another new mechanic is light core figures. They're reposed versions of existing Skylanders that when placed on the portal they light up, which may sound like nothing more than a fancy way to charge more money for characters, and yes, light core figures are more expensive, but when they appear in game they destroy all enemies in the area. The heroic challenges make a comeback and perform the same function. There's also a new minigame in the form of Sky Stones, a type of card game that you play with NPCs. Winning these minigames nets you a card for your deck. It's kinda like the game Othello, only the pieces have what I can only call attack power on each of their 4 sides. It's a fun little game, but I wouldn't want to play it all the time. But there are times where it's mandatory to play, but it's rare. There are new enemies, but there's returning ones and variations of returning ones. The new levels are pretty fun to go through and do provide some new challenges and puzzles, and the Giants do add some new exploration elements and make things easier when breakable walls come into question. But when it comes to boss fights, there really are none. There's 2 or 3 arena battles, but those don't really feel like boss battles. The Drill X robot is a pretty epic boss fight, and it's like the Great Mighty Pooh boss from Conker's Bad Fur Day. The Chompy Mage was really fun and was kinda like the shooter Ikaruga, which I recommend playing. But the final boss was kind of hit and run, where you were just able to run around the arena avoiding enemies while hitting the boss's weak spots. When it comes to upgrading your Skylanders, the mechanics are the same, but one thing that was added was the ability to change the path of your Skylander without needing to reset it. However, this is only available with Series 2 figures. A Series 2 figure is a repose of a character from a previous set, and a figure series number has nothing to do with the games. For example, Series 1 Spyro is from Spyro's Adventure, Series 2 is from Giants, and Series 3, which is Megahorn Spyro, is from SWAT Force. But Series 1 Pop Fizz is from Giants, Series 2 is called Super Gulp Pop Fizz and is from SWAT Force, and Series 3 Fizzy Frenzy Pop Fizz is from Trap Team. I really like this feature of swapping a character's path without resetting it. It is really silly to have to reset it and start all over, especially when you're rather late in the game. Especially if you make a mistake and try to back out because the confirm and cancel buttons are reversed on the Wii U version because button placement is different. There's also a noticeable delay with the secondary attack. I noticed this mostly with Flashwing. When moving in battle, there was at least a 1.5 delay, but on Flynn's ship, there was almost no delay. Ninjini also has a noticeable delay when charging her orb throwing attack, which sometimes didn't respond at all. I'm not sure if this is across all platforms or just the Wii U version. Maybe someone who's played Skylanders Giants on a different system can confirm it. Cinder and Jetvac didn't have any noticeable delay with their secondary attacks, so I'm not sure if it's the way the character is programmed or a bug in the game. Some Skylanders are still overpowered, but that doesn't surprise me, because the stats are on the figure as well as the game, and since some figures are backwards compatible, it would probably screw things up.
Giants is the type of sequel that plays it safe. Really safe to the point where it feels more like the same, even with all the new Skylanders. This is more of an expansion than a full-out sequel.
Even the story picks up right after the first game. Chaos, who was banished to Earth, uses a toy portal to get back into Skylands, and this time he's after the Iron Fist. A literal Iron Fist so he can control the Archean army. Think Hellboy 2, the Golden Army, and the Skylanders are off to stop him. There is some backstory like how the Archeans ruled Skylands and enslaved its inhabitants, then the first Skylanders, which were the Giants, took them down but were banished to Earth. The story seems to have a darker tone than the first, but it still has that Saturday morning cartoon feel to it, and Chaos is still fun to watch. The Skylanders are still referred to as Skylander, which still feels impersonal, but I understand why they did it. When it comes to gameplay length, the Giants feel shorter than the first Skylanders game, but it's actually an hour longer. And the new Giant mechanic is terribly underused. I think it's only needed for one part in the beginning of the game, and that's iffy at best, as I was testing out the new mechanic and I didn't even try to forgo it. It wasn't until the 4th stage is when I realized how rarely I was using the Giant figure, and even when there were times that I could use it, there were always ways around it. And I can understand that for gameplay purposes, they needed to include a way around it in case the Giant got knocked out. The camera is a little bit worse. It's still at a fixed angle, but I had more issues with it zooming out too far to the point where I couldn't see my character, especially with the final boss when the Skylander got stuck and gangbanged from all directions. The really good thing about Giants is that your figures from Spyro's Adventure are compatible with this game, saving you money on buying figures as most of the new figures are considered Series 2, and therefore repos versions of the ones from Spyro Adventure. And the only advantage to the Series 2 figures is that they have the ability to switch paths for their attacks.
Skylanders Giants brings some minor improvements, but it's rather small on the idea of Giants. It's an okay game, but you could skip this and go on the SWAT Force because you're not missing much here.